Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little stranger, a time when your urine could save your life and your best friend might be a pig. We're diving into what the Middle Ages were really like, beyond the myths and fairy tales. The truth is, these people lived in a world so weird that fiction couldn't compete, and I'll show you exactly what I mean tonight. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're hearing this from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to me seeing who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background noise, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1347. The good news is, you're alive. The bad news, well, there's a lot of bad news. Your pillow is a sack filled with dried peas, because feathers are for rich people, and rich people don't live in your village. The peas have gone hard over the winter months, and they click against each other when you move your head. Click, click, click. Every night. Click, click, click. You've gotten used to it. Everyone has gotten used to it. Your neighbor Agnes is already awake, because Agnes is always awake at this hour. Agnes talks to her chickens, not in the way people talk to pets today. Agnes talks to her chickens because Agnes believes her chickens talk back. And maybe they do. Agnes says the brown hen told her it's going to rain. Agnes says the black rooster warns her when strangers are coming. Agnes says the white hen with one eye predicts deaths. Agnes is usually right about these things. Agnes's chickens are better than weather reports that won't exist for centuries. You roll off your straw mattress. It crackles. Everything crackles. Straw. Dried herbs hanging from the ceiling. The rushes on the floor that haven't been changed in 3 months. Crackle, crackle, crackle. Your house sounds like a campfire that never burns. The rushes on the floor are supposed to keep the house clean, but mostly they hide the dirt and the bugs and the small bones from dinner scraps. Sometimes you find coins in the rushes. Sometimes you find teeth. Sometimes you find things you can't identify and you throw them out the window. The window doesn't have glass. Glass is for churches and lords. Your window has a wooden shutter that bangs in the wind. Bang, bang, bang. All night during storms. Bang, bang, bang. But today there's no wind, so the window is just a hole. Through the hole, you can see the sun rising over the village well. The well where everyone gets water. The same well where everyone throws their garbage. The same well where the pigs drink. The same well where sometimes people fall in and sometimes people don't come back out. But it's the only well, so you'll get your water there later, just like everyone else. Your wife is making pottage. Pottage is what you eat. Pottage is what everyone eats. Pottage is oats and water, and whatever else she can find. Sometimes there's a turnip in the pottage. Sometimes there's an onion. Sometimes there's meat, but only if something died. Yesterday, there was meat because the neighbor's pig got sick. Everyone in the village ate pieces of that pig. You ate pieces of that pig. The pig probably died from the same disease that killed 3 people last month. But meat is meat, and meat means you might live another day. Your wife stirs the pottage with a wooden spoon. The wooden spoon is carved from oak. Your grandfather carved it. Your father used it. You use it. Your son will use it. The wooden spoon has been stirring pottage for 60 years. It's smooth from all the stirring, smooth and brown and worn thin at the edges. The pottage bubbles, bubble, 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 like mud in a swamp. Bubble, bubble, bubble. The smell is always the same. Oats and smoke and something else you can't name. Something that might be hope or might be desperation. They smell the same. Time to check the animals. You have 3 animals, a pig, a goat, and a chicken. The pig sleeps in your house during winter because pigs freeze to death and frozen pigs don't make bacon. The pig is smarter than most people you know. The pig recognizes its name. The pig knows when it's dinner time. The pig knows when strangers are coming, just like Agnes's chickens. The pig also knows it's going to die soon and become bacon. The pig doesn't seem to mind. Nothing minds anything here. Minding things is a luxury. The goat gives milk, sometimes, when the goat feels like it, when the goat has eaten enough grass, when the goat isn't sick, when the goat hasn't been cursed by the witch who lives in the woods. The witch doesn't really live in the woods. The witch is Margaret from 2 villages over, and she sells herbs and tells fortune and knows things about healing that the priests don't like. But people call her a witch because witches are easier to understand than healers. Witches are bad. Healers are complicated. Bad is simpler. The chicken lays eggs. 1 egg every few days. Sometimes no eggs for weeks. You don't know why. Chickens are mysterious. Chickens have their own plans. The chicken walks around the yard making chicken noises. Cluck, cluck, cluck. All day. Cluck, cluck, cluck. The chicken eats bugs and seeds and small stones. The chicken needs the small stones to digest food. You don't understand this, but you accept it. You accept many things you don't understand. Understanding things is also a luxury. Breakfast is pottage. Pottage from the same pot your wife was stirring. The pot that never gets fully clean because soap is expensive and water is precious and time is always running out. You eat the pottage with the wooden spoon your grandfather carved. The pottage is warm and thick and tastes like survival. Not good, not bad, just survival. Your teeth hurt while you eat because your teeth always hurt. Everyone's teeth hurt. Tooth pain is like breathing. Automatic, constant, ignored. Your youngest daughter has a loose tooth. She wiggles it with her tongue. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. The tooth will fall out soon and she'll put it under her pillow, but not for a tooth fairy. There are no tooth fairies here. She'll put it under her pillow because teeth are magic. Small magic, old magic. Magic that might keep her safe, or might bring luck, or might do nothing at all. But doing nothing costs nothing, so you might as well try. After breakfast, you walk to the fields. The fields where you work for the Lord, who owns everything, including you. The Lord you've never met but who controls whether you live or die. The Lord who takes half of everything you grow, and most of everything you make, and all of your choices. The Lord's fields stretch beyond the horizon. Rows and rows of barley and rye and oats. Rows that you planted, rows that you tend, rows that you'll harvest, rows that will feed the Lord's horses while you eat pottage. The work is always the same. Bend and plant, stand and walk, bend and weed, stand and walk, bend and harvest, stand and walk. Your back hurts from all the bending. Your legs hurt from all the walking. Your hands hurt from all the gripping. Pain becomes part of the work. Work becomes part of the pain. They're inseparable like water and wet. Other people work in the fields beside you. Thomas, who never talks because he cut out his own tongue during the plague year when he thought demons were living in his mouth. Sarah, who talks constantly because silence scares her more than death. William, who sings while he works because singing makes the time pass faster, and time passing faster means going home sooner. Margaret, who tells stories about the old days when giants lived in the mountains and dragons slept under the rivers. No one believes the stories, but everyone listens because stories are better than thinking about tomorrow. The sun moves across the sky like it always does, slow and steady and indifferent. The sun doesn't care that you're tired or hungry or scared. The sun just moves from east to west, every day, forever, like time, like death. Like change that comes so slowly you don't notice until everything is different and you can't remember how it used to be. Noon arrives with the church bells. Dong, dong, dong. 12 times. Dong, dong, dong. The bells tell time for people who can't read sundials or afford hourglasses or understand numbers. The bells tell time for everyone, rich and poor, smart and simple, living and dying. Dong, dong, dong. Time moves forward whether you're ready or not. Lunch is bread. Hard bread that you have to soak in water or ale or whatever liquid you can find. The bread is dark and heavy and full of things that aren't wheat. Barley, rye, oats, sometimes ground acorns, sometimes ground beans, sometimes ground bark when nothing else is available. The bread tastes like earth and rain and determination, like refusing to give up even when giving up makes sense. You eat the bread with your hands because forks don't exist yet. Forks are still centuries away. You eat with your hands and your knife and your teeth, your hands that are always dirty, your knife that cuts bread and meat and rope and anything else that needs cutting, your teeth that hurt but still work, still chew, still help you survive another day in a world that wants you dead. After lunch, you go back to the fields. More bending, more standing, more walking, more pain. The afternoon stretches like a cat in sunlight, long and lazy and endless. Sweat drips into your eyes, salt stings, you blink, you wipe, you keep working, because stopping means starving, and starving means dying, and dying means your family dies too, so you don't stop. The other workers move, like ghosts, quiet, steady, efficient, no wasted motion, no unnecessary words. Energy is precious, strength is limited, every movement must count, every breath must matter, every step must bring you closer to evening, when you can rest, when you can eat, when you can sleep and dream of better days that will never come. Birds fly overhead, crows mostly, crows that eat the seeds you plant, and the grain you harvest, and the dead things that litter the roadside. Crows that know more about death than most people, crows that gather in groups and make crow noises and seem to gossip about human stupidity. Caw, 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 all day, caw, caw, caw. Like laughter, but darker. Like mockery, but honest. The fields smell like earth and manure and growing thing. Rich smells, fertile smells, life smells, but also death smells, because manure comes from animal, and animals die, and death feeds life, feeds death in an endless cycle that started before you were born and will continue after you're gone. The smell is good and bad at the same time. Like most things here, good and bad, mixed together, inseparable. Evening comes with more church bells. Dong dong dong, 6 times. Dong dong dong, time to stop working, time to go home, time to eat. Pottage again. The walk home is slow because everyone is tired. Feet drag, shoulders slump, backs ache. But home is waiting. Home with its straw mattress and wooden spoon, and pig that sleeps inside during winter. Dinner is pottage. Again, always pottage. But tonight, there's ale. Ale that your wife brewed from barley and water and wild herbs. Ale that tastes like hope and desperation mixed together. Ale that makes the pain duller and the fear quieter and the tomorrow less frightening. You drink the ale from a wooden cup, the same wooden cup your grandfather carved. Everything here was carved by your grandfather. He was good with wood. You are not good with wood. Your son will not be good with wood. Skills disappear. People forget. Knowledge dies. The ale makes you sleepy, warm sleepy, safe sleepy, the kind of sleepy that comes from survival, from making it through another day, from being alive when so many others are dead. Your wife sits beside you. She's tired too. Everyone is always tired. Tired is normal. Tired is expected. Tired is the price of living. Your children play with corn husk dolls. Dolls your wife made from leftover harvest materials. Dolls with no faces, because faces are hard to carve and corn husks are soft. The children make up stories about their faceless dolls, stories about princesses and knights and dragons and happy ending, stories that will never be true but feel good to tell. Children need story. Adults need stories too, but adults pretend they don't. Night falls like a curtain, black and heavy and complete. No streetlights, no house lights, no electric anything, just darkness and the glow from your fireplace and the sound of wind through the wooden shutters. Bang, bang, bang. The wind never stops. Bang, 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 like a heartbeat, like breathing, like time passing whether you want it to or not. You bank the fire for night. Cover the coals with ash so they'll stay warm until morning. Fire is life. Fire is warmth. Fire is the difference between living and dying. You treat fire with respect. You feed it carefully. You protect it jealously. Because fire that goes out might not come back, and fire that doesn't come back means freezing to death in your sleep. The family goes to bed together, all in the same room. All on straw mattresses, all under woolen blankets that smell like sheep, and rain, and years of use. Privacy doesn't exist. Privacy is a concept for rich people who have multiple rooms and servants and walls thick enough to block sound. You have one room, one family, one life, shared by everyone. Your wife sleeps beside you. Her breathing is soft and steady, in and out, like waves on a shore you've never seen. Like wind through trees you know by heart, like time passing in rhythm with heartbeats and hopes and dreams deferred. Her warmth keeps you warm. Your warmth keeps her warm. Warmth shared is warmth doubled. Your children sleep nearby. Small breathing, quick breathing, dream breathing. Children's dreams are different from adult dreams. Children dream of adventures and magic and possibilities. Adults dream of survival and safety and another day. Children's dreams are better. Adults' dreams are more realistic. Reality and dreams don't mix well. The pig sleeps in the corner, pig breathing, slow and heavy and satisfied. The pig dreams, dreams of mud and food and comfort. Simple dreams, honest dreams. Dreams without fear or worry or planning. Animals live in the present. Humans live in the future. They're afraid will never come. Outside, the wind continues. Bang, bang, bang against the shutters. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh through the trees. Creak, creak, creak through the village houses. Night sounds, familiar sounds, comforting sounds. Sounds that mean home and safety and another day survived. The darkness is complete now. Dark like the inside of a cave. Dark like the bottom of a well. Dark like sleep. Morning comes again, because morning always comes, even when you don't want it to, even when you're not ready, even when you'd rather stay asleep forever. Morning comes with the same routine. Wake up, check the animals, eat pottage, walk to the fields, work until evening, eat more pottage, sleep, repeat. But this morning is different. This morning There's news from the next village. Bad news. Plague news. The kind of news that travels faster than horses and spreads like fire and changes everything whether you're ready or not. The messenger is young and scared and breathless from running. He gasps out words between breaths. Plague, death, bodies, run. The plague is coming. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, but coming. Moving from village to village like smoke, like fog, like something that can't be stopped or avoided or reasoned with. The plague doesn't care if you're good or bad, rich or poor, young or old. The plague just kills. Randomly, efficiently, completely. People react the way people always react to news they can't control. Some panic, some pray, some pack up everything they own and prepare to run. Some accept, some deny, some laugh because laughing is better than crying, and crying doesn't help anyway. The village becomes busy with the business of preparing for death. Agnes talks to her chickens. She asks them what to do. She asks them where to go. She asks them how long until the plague arrives. The chickens cluck and scratch and peck at bugs. In the dirt. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Agnes nods like she understands. Agnes says the chickens told her to stay. Agnes says running doesn't help. Agnes says when your time comes, it comes whether you're home or hiding. Your wife starts cooking. More pottage, bigger batches. Enough for days, enough for weeks, enough for however long it takes. She moves quickly but calmly, efficiently but peacefully, like someone who's accepted what's coming and decided to face it with dignity. Her wooden spoon stirs, stir, 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 the same rhythm as always, stir, stir, stir. Some things don't change even when everything changes. You continue working in the fields because crops don't plant themselves and bills don't pay themselves, and life doesn't stop because death is coming. The other workers are quiet today, quieter than usual, everyone thinking the same thoughts. Everyone afraid of the same future, everyone hoping for the same impossible escape. The sun moves across the sky like always, indifferent to human fear, indifferent to human hope, indifferent to human plans and prayers, and desperate bargains with gods who might not be listening. The sun just shines, steady and reliable and eternal, like time, like death, like change that comes whether you want it or not. Days pass. The plague hasn't arrived yet. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll skip your village. Maybe it'll turn around and go back where it came from. Maybe the messenger was wrong. Maybe the news was exaggerated. Maybe hope is reasonable after all. People start to relax, start to smile, start to think about tomorrow again. Then the plague arrives. It comes quietly. No announcements, no warnings, no dramatic entrances, just people getting sick. First 1, then 3, then 7, then too many to count. People you know, people you work with, people you love. People who were healthy yesterday and dying today and dead tomorrow. The symptoms are always the same. Fever first, high fever that makes. People shake and sweat and say strange things. Then the swellings, dark swellings under the arms and in the groin and on the neck. Swellings that grow and blacken and burst. Then death, quick death, slow death, inevitable death. Your neighbor Thomas gets sick first. Thomas who cut out his own tongue. Thomas who works quietly in the fields. Thomas who never hurt anyone. Thomas who helped your family when your roof leaked last winter. Thomas who fed your pig when you were too sick to work. Thomas gets fever on Monday and swellings on Tuesday and dies on Wednesday. 3 days from healthy to dead. Sarah gets sick next. Sarah who talks constantly. Sarah who tells stories about her grandmother and her childhood and her dreams for her children. Sarah who shares her bread when you run out. Sarah who knows every song that's ever been sung in the village. Sarah gets fever on Thursday and swellings on Friday and dies on Saturday. 3 days. Always 3 days. The deaths come faster now. Every day someone new. Every day someone you know. Every day someone who was important and alive and full of plans and hopes and fears just like you. The village shrinks. Physically shrinks. Houses stand empty. Fields go unworked. Animals wander loose because their owners are dead. You help dig graves. Everyone helps dig graves. Graves for friends and neighbours and strangers who died alone. Graves in the churchyard that fill up quickly. Graves in the fields when the churchyard runs out of space. Graves in the woods when the fields fill up. Graves everywhere because death is everywhere and the dead need somewhere to go. The digging is hard work. Ground is frozen. Earth is rocky. Tools are dull and handles are cracked and backs are already sore from field work. But graves must be dug. Bodies must be buried. Death requires certain rituals. Certain respect, certain acknowledgement that these were people once, that they mattered, that they're gone now, but they existed. Agnes dies on a Tuesday. Agnes who talked to chickens. Agnes who predicted weather and visitors and deaths. Agnes who was usually right about everything. Agnes who said the plague was coming and said running wouldn't help and said when your time comes, it comes. Agnes was right about that too. Her chickens stand around her empty house making confused chicken noises. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Quieter now. Sadder now, like they know their friend is gone. Your wife gets sick on a Thursday. The fever starts in the morning while she's making pottage. She drops the wooden spoon your grandfather carved. It clatters on the floor. Clatter, clatter, clatter. The sound echoes in the empty house. Empty because your children are already dead. Dead last week. Dead the week before. Dead when you weren't paying attention because death moves too fast to track. She tries to keep working, tries to stir the pottage, tries to care for the animals, tries to pretend nothing is wrong. But fever makes everything difficult. Fever makes standing hard and thinking impossible and hoping pointless. She sits on the straw mattress, the mattress where you've slept together for 15 years, the mattress where your children were born, the mattress where you made plans for futures that will never happen. Friday brings the swellings, dark spots under her arms, dark spots on her neck, dark spots that grow and spread and blacken like fruit rotting in fast motion. She doesn't complain. Complaining doesn't help. She just lies still and breathes and watches the ceiling and waits for Saturday. Saturday comes with death. Quiet death. Peaceful death. Death that looks like sleep except for the stillness. The complete stillness that means everything has stopped. Heart, breathing, dreams, plans, hopes. Everything stops. And what's left is just a body. A beloved body. But just a body now. Just flesh and bones and memories that live only in your head. You dig her grave yourself, behind the house where she can see the garden she planted, where she can hear the chickens she fed, where she can smell the smoke from the fire she tended. The digging takes all day, because you're weak from hunger and grief and fear. But you dig, shovel by shovel, hour by hour, until the hole is deep enough and wide enough and ready. You wrap her in the woolen blanket, the blanket that smells like sheep and rain and years of use, the blanket that kept you both warm through so many cold nights, the blanket that will keep her warm now in a different way, a final way, a forever way. The burial is simple because simple is all you can manage. No priest because the priest is dead. No ceremony because you don't remember the words. No flowers because flowers are for celebrations. And this is not a celebration. Just you and the body of your wife and the hole in the ground and the terrible silence of being alone. You cover the grave with earth, shovel by shovel, like digging but in reverse, building a small hill where there used to be a hole, marking the spot where love lived and died and will be remembered until you die too, which might be soon, which might be tomorrow, which might be already starting. Days pass differently now, slower and faster at the same time. Slower because loneliness makes time stretch, faster because there's no one to share time with. Time shared moves differently than time alone. Time alone just passes, like water flowing downhill, like wind blowing through empty houses, like seasons changing, whether anyone is alive to notice. You still make pottage, smaller batches now, pottage for one. You still use the wooden spoon, your grandfather carved. The spoon feels heavy in your hand, heavy with memory, heavy with loss, heavy with the weight of being the last person in your family to hold it, the last person to remember your grandfather's hands shaping the wood. The village is mostly empty now, houses with open doors that bang in the wind, gardens with vegetables rotting on the vine, animals wandering loose and confused and slowly, dying of neglect. The few people still alive avoid each other, not from cruelty, from survival, from the knowledge that closeness brings contagion and contagion brings death. You work the fields alone, your fields now. The Lord is dead, the Lord's family is dead, the Lord's servants are dead. Authority has collapsed along with everything else. But crops still need tending, seeds still need planting, work still needs doing, not for the Lord anymore, not for money anymore, just for the habit of work, for the rhythm of survival, for something to do while waiting to die. The silence is the hardest part. Complete silence except for wind and birds, and the sound of your own breathing. No human voices, no human laughter, no human arguments or conversations or songs, just the quiet of a world where people used to live, the quiet of abandonment, the quiet of ending. Nights are long and cold and endless. You bank the fire carefully because no one will relight it if it goes out. You sleep alone on the straw mattress where two people used to sleep. The mattress feels too big now, too empty, too full of ghosts and memories in the shape of someone who isn't there anymore. Dreams come differently now, darker dreams, stranger, dreams. Dreams where your wife is still alive and your children are still young and the plague never came. Dreams where you wake up and everything is like it used to be. Dreams that feel more real than waking. Dreams you don't want to leave. Dreams that make morning cruel. Winter comes early this year, or maybe it just feels early because everything feels different now. Cold wind, grey sky, dead leaves blowing through empty streets. Ice forming on the village well when no one comes to draw water anymore. Frost covering the graves where everyone you ever loved is sleeping. The animals die slowly, the pig first. Pigs need care and company and regular feeding. Without people, pigs just fade away. Your pig dies quietly in the corner where it used to sleep. Dies without complaint or drama. Just stops eating, stops moving, stops being alive. You bury it beside the house where your wife can keep it company. The goat dies next. Goats are hardy, but even hardy animals need help to survive winter. The goat tries to find shelter, tries to find food, tries to stay warm, but cold wins in the end. Cold always wins. You find the goat frozen stiff in the morning, eyes open, legs straight, like a wooden toy that stopped working. The chicken dies last. Chickens are survivors. Chickens adapt. Chickens find ways to live when everything else dies. But winter kills chickens too. Eventually, inevitably, you find it in the yard covered with snow. Just a small bump in the white, a tiny grave already, dug by nature. Now you're completely alone. Alone in a village of empty houses. Alone in a world that used to be full of people and voices and life. Alone with memories that feel like dreams, and dreams that feel like memories. Alone with the terrible silence of survival. You still make pottage, still use the wooden spoon, still tend the fire, still work the fields, still dig graves when you find bodies. Still hope tomorrow will be different while knowing it won't be. Still breathe and think and plan and fear. Still live because dying takes effort and living is just habit now. Spring arrives on schedule. Seasons don't stop for plague. Flowers bloom in empty gardens. Trees grow leaves over abandoned houses. Grass grows tall in unused fields. Nature continues because nature doesn't need people to keep going. Nature just needs time and sunshine and rain. Nature is patient. Nature is indifferent. Nature will outlive everything. New people arrive in late spring. Travelers from distant places where the plague hasn't reached yet or has already passed. Survivors looking for empty land and abandoned houses and fresh starts. They find all three in your village. They find you too, alive but alone, working but waiting, surviving but not living. The new people are cautious at first. They've heard stories about plague villages, about ghosts and curses and death that lingers in empty houses. But houses are houses, and land is land, and beggars can't be choosers. They move into the empty homes. They plant new gardens. They bring new animals. They start new lives in places where old lives ended. You help them when you can. Show them which wells are safe, which fields grow best, which houses have the strongest roofs. You share what you know about survival in this place, about weather, patterns and soil conditions, and the habits of local predators. Knowledge earned through years of living here, knowledge paid for with sweat and pain and loss. The new people are kind but distant. They treat you like a relic, like something left over from before, like a reminder of what happened here and what could happen again. They're grateful for your help, but they don't invite you to share meals or celebrations or ordinary conversations. You understand, you're a walking reminder of mortality, of fragility, of how quickly everything can change. Life slowly returns to the village. Different life, new life, life that doesn't include the people who died, or the families that ended, or the stories that stopped being told, but life nonetheless. Children's voices in the yard where your children used to play, women's laughter, by the well where your wife used to draw water, men singing in the fields where you used to work with friends. You grow old watching the new life grow around you, old and alone and increasingly irrelevant. The young people don't know the olds. Stories don't remember the old ways, don't understand why certain things matter or how hard-won certain knowledge was. They have their own stories now, their own ways, their own knowledge. Your body begins to fail the way old bodies do, slowly at first, then faster. Joints that ache in the morning and stay stiff all day. Eyes that can't see clearly at distance. Ears that miss conversations and mistake sounds. Hands that shake when you try to write or carve or hold the wooden spoon steady. You still live in the same house, sleep on the same straw mattress. use the same wooden spoon your grandfather carved, but everything feels different now, emptier, quieter, like an echo of something that used to be real, like a memory of a life that belonged to someone else. The new villagers are respectful, but they don't understand. They see an old man living alone in a house too big for one person. They don't see the ghosts that share the space, don't hear the voices that still whisper in corners, don't feel the presence of people who lived and loved and died in these rooms. To them, it's just a house. To you, it's a museum of everything you've lost. Winter comes again, harder this time, colder, longer. Winter that settles in your bones and stays there. Winter that makes getting up difficult and staying warm impossible, and thinking clearly a luxury you can't afford. You bank the fire carefully each night because fire is life and life is precious even when it's lonely. Spring arrives but you barely notice. The warmth doesn't reach your bones anymore. The light doesn't lift your spirits. The new growth doesn't inspire hope. Spring is just another season passing, another cycle turning, another year closer to the end of a story that has gone on too long. Your memory begins to fade. Not all at once, gradually, like colors washing out of fabric, like writing fading from pages, like voices growing distant until you can't quite make out the words. You forget names first, then faces, then entire conversations and events and years. But you remember the wooden spoon, always the wooden spoon, the weight of it in your hand, the smooth surface worn by decades of use, the shape your grandfather's hands carved, the history of every meal it served, the connection to family and continuity, and the stubborn persistence of small things that outlast the people who made them. You still make pottage, smaller batches now, simpler recipe, just oats and water, and whatever you can find. The taste is familiar, even when everything else feels strange. The rhythm of stirring is comforting, even when comfort is hard to find. The wooden spoon knows its job, even when you forget yours. The new villagers check on you sometimes, bring you bread, ask if you need anything, worry about you living alone at your age. They mean well, but they don't understand that alone is the only way you know how to live now. That company feels strange after so many years of solitude. That conversation requires energy you don't have anymore. Autumn comes with the smell of dying leaves and the sound of wind through bare branches. Autumn that reminds you of other autumn, better autumn, autumns when you weren't alone. When the harvest meant celebration. When winter meant gathering together for warmth and storytelling and the quiet comfort of shared survival. This autumn feels different, final, like the last chapter of a book that has run out of words, like the end of a song that has forgotten its melody, like the closing of a door that won't open again. You feel it in your bones, in your breath, in the way morning light looks dimmer and evening shadows fall sooner. You spend more time sleeping. Sleep that comes easier and lasts longer and feels more welcoming than waking. Sleep where dreams are clearer than reality, where the dead visit and speak and act like they're still alive, where your wife still makes pottage and your children still play with corn husk dolls, and the world makes sense again. One morning, you don't wake up, not the way you usually do. Your body is still breathing, but your mind has gone somewhere else, somewhere quieter, somewhere without pain or fear or loneliness, somewhere that feels like home in a way this house stopped feeling. Like home years ago. The new villagers find you 3 days later, lying peacefully on the straw mattress where you've slept for decades, still holding the wooden spoon your grandfather carved, still surrounded by the ghosts of everyone you ever loved, still part of a story that started before you were born and will continue after you're gone. They bury you beside your wife, behind the house where she can see the garden, where she can hear the chickens, where she can smell the smoke from fires that still burn. The grave is simple, because simple is all anyone needs. Just earth and stone, and the quiet understanding that this is where the story ends. The wooden spoon goes to a new family, a young couple with small children and big dreams, and no idea what's coming. They use it to stir their own pottage, their own hopes, their own fears. The spoon doesn't remember you any more than it remembered your grandfather. Spoons don't have memory, but they have purpose, and purpose is sometimes enough. The village continues. New children are born, new houses are built, new stories begin. Life moves forward the way life always does, persistent, relentless, indifferent to the people who came before. The plague is forgotten, the emptiness is filled, the silence is replaced with new voices and new laughter and new dreams. But sometimes, on quiet nights, when the wind blows just right, when the moon is dark and the stars are bright, when the modern world feels thin and temporary, sometimes you can still hear echoes. Voices from the time before, whispers from the houses that remember, Sounds from the lives that were lived here when living was harder, and dying was easier, and surviving was everything. The church bells still ring, dong dong dong. Marking time for people who don't know time used to be marked differently, by sunrise and sunset, by seasons and harvests, by the rhythm of work and rest and work again. The bells ring for new people with new problems and new hopes, but they're the same bells, the same sound, the same eternal marking of moments that pass, whether we're ready or not. And if you listen carefully, if you're very quiet and very still, if you let your modern mind remember what it felt like to live when life was simpler and harder and more real, you might hear something else in those bells, something older, something deeper, something that connects you to everyone who ever lived and worked and loved and died in places like this. Something that sounds like pottage bubbling, like wooden spoons stirring, like straw crackling under sleeping bodies, like the eternal rhythm of survival, like the endless song of human persistence, like the quiet whisper of lives that mattered even when they didn't change the world, lives that mattered because they were lived, because they were witnessed, because they were remembered, even when everyone who remembered them is gone, even when their names are forgotten and their stories untold, even when their houses crumble and their fields return to forest. They mattered, they lived, they loved, they survived as long as they could, and that's enough, that's everything. That's the only story that really matters in the end, the story of getting up each morning, of making pottage with wooden spoons, of working in fields that stretch beyond the horizon, of loving people who will die, of hoping for futures that may never come, of surviving another day in a world that wants you dead, of being human in a time and place where being human requires everything you have. And now you know what it felt like to live in their skin, to breathe their air, to share their fears and hopes and small daily victories, to understand that history isn't just dates and names and important events. History is the taste of pottage and the weight of wooden spoons and the sound of wind through shutters that bang all night. History is ordinary people doing ordinary things in extraordinary circumstances. History is survival. History is love. History is the quiet courage of getting up each morning when morning might bring plague or war or famine or death. History is the strange resilience of humans who keep going even when going seems impossible. And that's enough history for tonight. Enough remembering, enough imagining, enough traveling to times and places that exist now only in stories and dreams, and the eternal echo of church bells that mark time for the living and the dead alike. Close your eyes now, rest now, sleep now, and let the past return to the quiet place where it lives, where it waits, where it remembers everything we've forgotten and forgives everything we failed to understand. But we're not done yet, because there's something I haven't told you about medieval life, something that makes everything you just experienced seem almost normal by comparison. Something about the church that controlled every breath you took. The church owned 1/3 of all land in Europe. 1/3. Imagine if today one organization controlled every third building, every third farm, every third business. That was the Catholic Church in medieval times, and they used this power in ways that would make your skin crawl. Take Pope Innocent III. He declared that all of England belonged to him personally, not to the church, to him. When King John refused to accept this, the Pope banned all church services in England for 6 years. No weddings, no funerals, no baptism, no last rites. People died believing they were going straight to hell because they couldn't receive final absolution. Innocent the third held an entire country's salvation hostage until the king surrendered his crown and rented it back from the Pope. But that's nothing compared to what happened in France during the Albigensian Crusade, when the Pope's army couldn't tell which villagers were heretics and which were good Catholics. The papal legate gave an order that still echoes through history. Quote, "Kill them all. God will know his own." End quote. 20,000 people died in one day. Men, women, children, babies, all slaughtered because sorting good from evil was too much trouble. This same church sold indulgences, pieces of paper that forgave your sins before you committed them. The price list was specific. Murder cost more than adultery. Adultery cost more than theft. But everything had a price. Rich people could literally buy their way into heaven, while poor people burned for the same crimes. Pope Leo X actually said, quote, "The fable of Christ has been very profitable to us," end quote. He said this out loud to other church officials while wearing robes made of gold thread. Now picture this. You're dying of plague, your family is dead, your village is empty, and the church tells you this is God's punishment for humanity's sins. But they also tell you that if you give them money, they can reduce your time in purgatory. If you give them land, they can guarantee your salvation. If you give them everything, they might even pray for your soul. The church's power went deeper than money. They controlled what you could think, what you could say, what you could believe. Owning a Bible in any language except Latin was punishable by death. Why? Because if people could read God's word for themselves, they might discover that nowhere in the Bible does it say the Pope is infallible. Nowhere does it say you need a priest to talk to God. Nowhere does it say the church should own 1/3 of Europe. But here's where it gets truly insane. The church maintained its power through a network of informants that would make modern surveillance states jealous. Your neighbor could report you for heretical thoughts. Your priest could report you for asking too many questions. Your own family could report you for owning forbidden books. And the punishment wasn't just death. It was specific kinds of death, designed to terrorize everyone who witnessed them. Burning was reserved for heretics. Not because fire was painful, though it was, because fire was believed to purify the soul. The church wanted to save your eternal spirit while destroying your earthly body. They were doing you a favor, or so they claimed. The reality was that burning alive took 15 to 20 minutes. 15 to 20 minutes of screaming while your skin blistered and your flesh melted and your hair caught fire, all while a priest read from scripture about God's mercy. Drawing and quartering was for traitors. First they hanged you, but only until you were almost dead. Then they cut you down and sliced open your belly while you watched your own intestines spill out. Then they cut off your arms and legs. Then they cut off your head. All of this happened in public squares while children watched and cheered. The church said this was necessary to maintain social order, that seeing others die horribly would discourage sin. But wait, it gets worse. The church invented the wheel, not the wheel for transportation, the wheel for torture. A massive wooden wheel with spokes. They would tie you to it and then beat you with hammers, breaking every bone in your body one by one, starting with your fingers, then your hands, then your arms, working their way up slowly while you screamed for mercy that never came. The whole process took hours, sometimes days, all for the crime of disagreeing with church doctrine. And here's the part that should terrify you. These weren't rare punishments. They weren't exceptions. They were routine, standard operating procedure. The church kept detailed records of who was tortured, how they were tortured, and how long they lasted. They shared techniques between different regions. They trained specialists in the art of inflicting maximum pain while keeping victims alive as long as possible. The Spanish Inquisition alone tortured over 100,000 people over 3 centuries. 100,000. That's not counting the people they just executed outright. That's not counting the people who died in church prisons. That's just the documented torture cases. The real number was probably 3 times higher. But here's what's really disturbing. The church didn't just accept these practices. They celebrated them. Pope Innocent IV issued a papal bull in 1254, specifically authorizing torture as a legitimate tool for investigating heresy. He called it, quote, pious work in service of the Almighty, end quote. Torturing people was considered holy, sacred, a religious duty. Now imagine you're that medieval peasant again. Imagine knowing that any wrong word, any suspicious behavior, any failure to show proper respect could result in being strapped to a torture wheel. Imagine knowing that the organization that claims to represent God's love on earth has dungeons full of instruments designed specifically to cause unbearable agony. Imagine living every day under that kind of fear. This is why people confess to crimes they didn't commit, why they accuse their neighbors of witchcraft, why they handed over their life savings to buy indulgences for sins they might commit someday, not because they were weak or stupid or superstitious, because they were terrified, rightfully terrified, of an organization that had absolute power and used that power to inflict suffering on an industrial scale. The church's torture chambers were marvels of engineering. They contained devices you wouldn't believe if I described them in detail, but I will anyway, because understanding medieval life means understanding the machinery of terror that kept everyone in line. The rack stretched your body until your joints separated, slowly, over hours, while church officials asked you questions about your beliefs. The thumbscrews crushed your fingers bone by bone. The Iron Maiden enclosed you in a coffin lined with spikes that pierced your flesh without hitting vital organs. You could survive inside an Iron Maiden for days. bleeding slowly while spikes prevented you from moving or sleeping or finding any position that didn't cause agony. The strappado was perhaps the most common. They tied your hands behind your back and hoisted you up by the rope until your shoulders dislocated. Then they dropped you suddenly and caught you just before you hit the ground. The jolt would tear tendons and break bones. They could repeat this process dozens of times, each drop causing new injuries, new pain, new damage that would never fully heal. But wait, there's more. Because physical torture was only part of the church's arsenal, they also perfected psychological torture, methods designed to break your mind before they broke your body. They would arrest entire families and torture them one by one while the others watched. Children forced to witness their parents being flayed alive. Parents forced to listen to their children's screams. Spouses forced to choose which one would be tortured first. The survivors' guilt and trauma were often worse than physical pain. They would tell you lies about what your family members had confessed under torture. They would forge documents showing that your closest friends had betrayed you. They would manipulate evidence to make you believe that everyone you trusted was working against you. Isolation and paranoia were weapons as effective as any rack or thumbscrew. They would keep you awake for weeks, constantly interrogating you, constantly threatening you, constantly playing mind games designed to confuse and disorient you. Sleep deprivation causes hallucinations, makes you say things you don't mean, makes you agree to anything just to make the questions stop. The church knew this, used this, perfected this. And here's the truly evil part. They would offer you salvation right up until the end. They would tell you that confessing your sins and accepting church authority would save your soul, even if it couldn't save your body. They would present torture as an opportunity for spiritual purification. They would claim that suffering brought you closer to God. They turned their own brutality into a theological virtue. Now you might think this was just how the world worked back then, that everyone was cruel and violent and torture was normal. But that's not true. The church's systematic use of torture was unique. It was organized, it was bureaucratic, it was documented. It was exported to every corner of Europe through a network of trained professionals who specialized in breaking human beings. Other medieval institutions used violence. Yes, kings executed traitors, lords punished criminals, but they didn't create training manuals for torture. They didn't establish schools for interrogators. They didn't maintain detailed records of which techniques worked best on which types of victims. That was all the church. The church turned torture into a science. They studied pain the way doctors study healing. They understood anatomy better than physicians because they knew exactly how to damage the human body without causing immediate death. They were pioneers in what we would now call psychological warfare, masters of terror applied with religious precision. And this brings us to something even more disturbing, the way the church used ordinary people as instruments of oppression. They created a culture where everyone was responsible for monitoring everyone else, where reporting your neighbor's suspicious behavior was considered virtuous, where failing to report suspicious behavior made you suspicious too. Children were taught to inform on their parents. Wives were encouraged to inform on their husband. Servants were rewarded for informing on their masters. The church created a society where trust was impossible and paranoia was survival, where love itself became dangerous because loving someone meant potentially having to betray them. This is how the church maintained control with a relatively small number of actual officials. They didn't need an army in every village. They just needed everyone to fear everyone else. They needed people to police themselves, to torture themselves with the constant worry that someone was watching, someone was listening, someone was judging. The psychological impact of this system was profound. People developed what we would now recognize as symptoms of severe trauma: chronic anxiety, paranoid thinking, emotional numbness, inability to form close relationships, difficulty making decisions, constant hypervigilance, an entire civilization, suffering from what we now call post-traumatic stress disorder. But here's what makes it even worse. The church convinced people that their suffering was holy, that fear was appropriate, that constant anxiety about sin and punishment was the mark of a good Christian. They turned mental illness into religious virtue. They made trauma seem like grace. People would flagellate themselves with whips, beat their own backs bloody as a form of prayer. They would wear hair shirts that caused constant irritation and pain. They would fast until they hallucinated and call the hallucinations visions from God. They would sleep on beds of thorns and walk barefoot through snow and deliberately expose themselves to disease as acts of devotion. The church encouraged all of this, praised it, held up self-torture as an example of proper faith. They created a culture where hurting yourself was proof that you loved God, where pleasure was sinful and pain was sacred, where the natural human desire for happiness and comfort was evidence of spiritual corruption. Now imagine being that medieval peasant in this environment. Imagine waking up every morning knowing that everything you think, everything you feel, everything you want could be interpreted as evidence of heresy. Imagine going to church and hearing sermons about how your body is evil, your desires are corrupt, your thoughts are dangerous, and your only hope is complete submission to an organization that tortures people for asking questions. Imagine knowing that the priest taking your confession could decide you're a heretic, that the neighbors sharing your pew could report you for not praying enthusiastically enough, that your own family members might save themselves by sacrificing you. Imagine living in a world where love is weakness, trust is foolish, and hope is probably sinful. This is the real horror of medieval life, not the lack of modern conveniences, not the poor hygiene or dangerous working conditions or primitive medicine. The real horror was the systematic destruction of human connection, the deliberate cultivation of fear, mistrust, and self-hatred, the transformation of an entire civilization into prisoners who had internalized their guards. And the church did all of this while claiming to represent a God of love, while preaching about mercy and forgiveness and eternal salvation. The cognitive dissonance must have been overwhelming, believing that the same organization that tortured your neighbor last week was your only path to heaven, trusting your eternal soul to people who demonstrably enjoyed inflicting temporal agony. But somehow, people managed to survive this, not just physically, but psychologically. They found ways to maintain hope in hopeless circumstances. They found ways to love each other despite the dangers. They found ways to preserve their humanity in an inhuman system. And that might be the most remarkable thing about medieval people. Not what they endured, but how they endured it. They told stories. They sang songs. They celebrated small victories and mourned small losses. They fell in love and had children and made art and discovered beauty in a world designed to crush beauty. They were more resilient than we can imagine because they had to be, because the alternative was complete despair. And now you know the full picture. Now you understand why that wooden spoon mattered so much, why ordinary objects and daily routines and simple pleasures were treasures beyond price. Because in a world where everything could be taken away without warning, where everyone you loved could be destroyed for reasons beyond your control, the small things that endured were miracle. Sleep well, knowing that you live in a time when thinking dangerous thoughts won't get you tortured, when asking questions won't get you burned alive, when disagreeing with authority won't get your family destroyed, when you can love someone without having to betray them. These freedoms that seem natural to you were unimaginable luxury to the people whose stories you've just heard. Rest easy in your soft bed with your electric lights and your clean water and your rights that seem obvious, but were purchased with centuries of blood and tears, and the quiet courage of people who kept being human when humanity was forbidden. Dream peaceful dreams, knowing that the wooden spoon has finally been passed to hands that don't shake with fear, that the pottage is seasoned with hope instead of desperation, that the story continues in a world where stories are allowed to have happy endings.